The Law of One Session 62, July 13, 1981.
Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Before we begin, may we request that a circle be walked about this instrument, and let then each of the supporting group expel breath forcibly, approximately 2½ feet above the instrument's head, the circle then again being walked about the instrument. This was done as directed. I am Ra. We appreciate your kind cooperation. Please recheck the alignment of perpendicularity and we will begin. This was done as directed. I am Ra. We communicate now.
Questioner, could you tell me what was wrong or what caused the necessity for the re-walking of the circle and the purpose of the expelling of breath?
Ra, I am Ra. This instrument was under specific psychic attack at the time of the beginning of the working. There was a slight irregularity in the words verbalized by your sound complex vibratory mechanisms in the protective walking of the circle. Into this opening came this entity and began to work upon the instrument, now in trance state, as you would call it. This instrument was being quite adversely affected in physical complex distortions. Thus the circle was properly walked. The breath of righteousness expelled the thought form and the circle again walked.
Questioner, what was the nature of the thought form or its affiliation?
Ra, I am Ra. This thought form was of Orion affiliation.
Questioner, was the attack successful in creating any further distortion of the instrument's physical complex?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct.
Questioner, what is the nature of this distortion?
Ra, this thought form sought to put an end to this instrument's incarnation by working with the renal distortions which, although corrected upon time/space, are vulnerable to one which knows the way to separate time/space molding and space/time distortions which are being unmolded, vulnerable as before the, shall we say, healing.
Questioner, what detrimental effect has been done?
Ra, I am Ra. There will be some discomfort. However, we were fortunate in that this instrument was very open to us and well tuned. Had we not been able to reach this instrument and instruct you, the instrument's physical vehicle would soon be unviable.
Questioner, will there be any lasting effect from this attack as far as the instrument's physical vehicle is concerned?
Ra, I am Ra. This is difficult to say. We are of the opinion that no lasting harm or distortion will occur. The healer was strong and the bonds taking effect in the remolding of these renal distortions were effective. It is at this point a question of two forms of the leavings of what you may call a spell or a magic working, the healer's distortions versus the attempt at Orion distortions, the healer's distortions full of love, the Orion distortions also pure in separation. It seems that all is well except for some possible discomfort which shall be attended if persistent.
Questioner, was the opening that was made in the protective circle planned to be made by the Orion entity? Was it a specific planned attempt to make an opening, or was this something that just happened by accident?
Ra, I am Ra. This entity was, as your people put it, looking for a target of opportunity. The missed word was a chance occurrence and not a planned one. We might suggest in the, shall we say, future, as you measure space/time, as you begin a working, be aware that this instrument is likely being watched for any opportunity. Thus if the circle is walked with some imperfection, it is well to immediately repeat. The expelling of breath is also appropriate, always to the left.
Questioner, would you expand on what you just said about the expelling of breath? I wasn't quite sure what you meant.
Ra, I am Ra. The repetition of that performed well at this working is advisable if the circle is walked in less than the appropriate configuration.
Questioner, but you mentioned the expelling of the breath to the left, I believe. Would you tell me what you meant by that?
Ra, I am Ra. It is as you have just accomplished, the breath being sent above the instrument's head from its right side to its left.
Questioner, is there anything we can do for the instrument after she comes out of trance to help her recover from this attack?
Ra, I am Ra. There is little to be done. You may watch to see if distortions persist and see that the appropriate healers are brought into contact with this mind/body/spirit complex in the event that difficulty persists. It may not. This battle is even now being accomplished. Each may counsel the instrument to continue its work as outlined previously.
Questioner, who would the appropriate healers be, and how would we bring them in contact with the instrument?
Ra, I am Ra. There are 4. The difficulty being at all noticed as bodily distortion, the one known as Dawn and the one known as Jim may work upon the instrument's bodily complex by means of the practices which are developing in each entity. Given persistence of distortion, the one known as Steward shall be seen. Given the continued difficulty past the point of one of your cycles called the fortnight, the one known as Douglas shall be seen.
Questioner, does the instrument know who these people are, Stewart and Douglas? I don't know who they are.
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct.
Questioner, is that the sum total of what we can do to aid the instrument?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. We may note that the harmonies and loving social intercourse which prevails habitually in this group create a favorable environment for each of you to do your work.
Questioner, what priority, shall I say, does the Orion group place upon the reduction of effectiveness or elimination of effectiveness of this group with respect to activities on planet Earth at this time? Can you tell me that?
Ra, I am Ra. This group, as all positive channels and supporting groups, is a greatly high priority with the Orion group. This instrument's bodily distortions are its most easily unbound or unloosed distortion, dissolving the mind/body/spirit complex if the Orion group is successful. This particular group having learned to be without serious chinks, may we say, in mind and spirit complex vibratory patterns. In other channels other chinks may be more in evidence.
Questioner, I'll make this statement and you correct me. The Orion group has as an objective the bringing of service to self-polarized entities to harvest, as great a harvest as possible. This harvest will build their potential or their ability to do work in consciousness as given by the distortion of the law of one called the law of squares or doubling. Is this correct?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct.
Questioner, are there other groups of those who are on the service to self path joined with those from the Orion constellation? For instance, those of Southern Cross, are they presently working for the same type of harvest with respect to Earth?
Ra, I am Ra. These you mention of Southern Cross are members of the Orion group. It is not, shall we say, according to understood wording that a group from various galaxies should be named by one. However, those planetary social memory complexes of the so-called Orion constellation have the upper hand and thus rule the other members. You must recall that in negative thinking there is always the pecking order, shall we say, and the power against power in separation.
Questioner, by creating as large a harvest as possible of negatively oriented entities from Earth, then, the social memory complex of the Orion group gains in strength. Am I correct in assuming this strength then is in the total strength of the complex, the pecking order remaining approximately the same, and those at the top gaining in strength with respect to the total strength of the social memory complex? Is this correct?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. To the stronger go the greater shares of polarity.
Questioner, then what do the ones at the top of the pecking order of the Orion group? Well, let me first ask this, are we talking about the fourth density group now?
Ra, I am Ra. There are fourth and a few fifth density members of the Orion group.
Questioner, then is the top of the pecking order fifth density?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct.
Questioner, what is the objective? What does the, shall we say, the leader, the one at the very top of the pecking order in fifth density Orion, have as an objective? I would like to understand his philosophy with respect to his objectives and plans for what we might call the future or his future.
Ra, I am Ra. This thinking will not be so strange to you. Therefore, we may speak through the densities as your planet has some negatively oriented action in sway at this space/time nexus. The early fifth density negative entity, if oriented towards maintaining cohesion as a social memory complex, may in its free will determine that the path to wisdom lies in the manipulation and exquisite propriety of all other selves. It then, by virtue of its abilities in wisdom, is able to be the leader of fourth density beings which are upon the road to wisdom by exploring the dimensions of love of self and understanding of self. These fifth density entities see the creation as that which shall be put in order. Dealing with a plane such as this third density at this harvesting, it will see the mechanism of the call more clearly and have much less distortion towards plunder or manipulation by thoughts which are given to negatively oriented entities, although in allowing this to occur and sending less wise entities to do this work, any successes redound to the leaders. The fifth density sees the difficulties posed by the light and in this way directs entities of this vibration to the seeking of targets of opportunity such as this one. If fourth density temptations, shall we say, towards distortion of ego, etc., are not successful, the fifth density entity then thinks in terms of the removal of light.
Questioner, when the Orion entity who waits us seeking the opportunity to attack is with us here, can you describe his method of coming here, what he looks like, and how he waits? I know that this isn't too important, but it might give me a little insight into what we are talking about.
Ra, I am Ra. Fifth density entities are very light beings, although they do have the type of physical vehicle which you understand. Fifth density entities are very fair to look upon in your standard of beauty. The thought is what is sent, for a fifth density entity is likely to have mastered this technique or discipline. There is little or no means of perceiving such an entity, for unlike fourth density negative entities, the fifth density entity walks with light feet. This instrument was aware of extreme coldness in the past diurnal cycle and spent much more time than your normal attitudes would imagine to be appropriate in what seemed to each of you an extremely warm climate. This was not perceived by the instrument, but the drop in subjective temperature is a sign of presence of a negative or non-positive or draining entity. This instrument did mention a feeling of discomfort but was nourished by this group and was able to dismiss it. Had it not been for a random mishap, all would have been well, for you have learned to live in love and light and do not neglect to remember the one infinite Creator.
Questioner, then it was a fifth density entity that made this particular attack on the instrument today?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct.
Questioner, isn't this unusual that a fifth density then would bother to do this rather than sending a fourth density servant, shall I say?
Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Nearly all positive channels and groups may be lessened in their positivity or rendered quite useless by what we may call the temptations offered by the fourth density negative thought forms. They may suggest many distortions towards specific information, towards the aggrandizement of the self, towards the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. These distortions remove the focus from the one infinite source of love and light of which we are all messengers, humble and knowing that we, of ourselves, are but the tiniest portion of the Creator, a small part of a magnificent entirety of infinite intelligence.
Questioner, is there something that the instrument could do or we could do for the instrument to eliminate the problem she has? She continually experiences of the cold feeling of these attacks.
Ra, I am Ra. Yes.
Questioner, would you tell me what we could do?
Ra, I am Ra. You could cease in your attempts to be channels for the love and the light of the one infinite Creator.
Questioner, have I missed anything now that we can do at all to aid the instrument during, before, or after a session or at any time?
Ra, I am Ra. The love and devotion of this group misses nothing. Be at peace. There is some toll for this work. This instrument embraces this or we could not speak. Rest then in that peace and love and do as you will, as you wish, as you feel. Let there be an end to worry when this is accomplished. The great healer of distortions is love.
Questioner, I have a question that I couldn't properly answer last night. It was asked by Morris. It has to do with the vibrations of the densities. I understand that first density is composed of core atomic vibrations that are in the red spectrum, second in the orange, etc. Am I to understand that the core vibrations of our planet are still in the red and that second density beings are still in the orange at this time/space or space/time right now, and that each density as it exists on our planet at this time has a different core vibration, or is this incorrect?
Ra, I am Ra. This is precisely correct.
Questioner, then as the fourth density vibrations come in, this means that the planet can support entities of fourth density core vibration. Will the planet then still be first density core vibration, and will there be second density entities on it with second density vibrations, and will there be third density entities with third density vibrations?
Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this working. There is energy, but the distortions of the instrument suggest to us it would be well to shorten this working with your permission.
Questioner, yes.
Ra, you must see the earth, as you call it, as being 7 earths. There is red, orange, yellow, and there will soon be a completed green color vibratory locus for fourth density entities which they will call Earth. During the fourth density experience, due to the lack of development of fourth density entities, the third density planetary sphere is not useful for habitation, since the early fourth density entity will not know precisely how to maintain the illusion that fourth density cannot be seen or determined from any instrumentation available to any third density. Thus in fourth density the red, orange, and green energy nexi of your planet will be activated, while the yellow is in potentiation along with the blue and the indigo. May we ask at this time if there be any brief queries?
Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact?
Ra, all is well. You have been most conscientious. I am Ra. I leave you, my friends, in the glory of the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.